All right, we are recording. It has been a long time since I've done one of these videos. I've been hard at work animating Celestia's main. I've actually taken a break from that so that I can work on something that I knew that I wanted to add to this fan game for a long time. In fact, from just about the beginning of the project, ever since about spring of 2013. The shutdown, the cease and desist order that got sent to Main Six's Fighting His Magic game, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Some part of me has always hoped that Weather Factory Meltdown is going to expand into something that is actually worth getting Hasbro's approval for. That's probably not going to happen now that Hasbro is announcing essentially the end of Friendship is Magic and a continuity reboot in G4. It's not likely to happen, but a guy can still dream. In any case, what I'd wanted to do in the event that they say no is to add essentially a parody mode to this, to make the game a parody. And for the longest time, the way I did that was I had parody elements right there in the game. These were not bins of trash. These were fillies and colts trapped in cages. It was basically me using Rainbow Factory's canon, or parts of it, and making it a parody in that sense. But I've actually added the ability, and I've even added this to the options menu here. You can switch the parody mode on and off. And there's a kind of a funny way of doing that. There's pure parody, parody default, polite default, and pure polite. And if I select either pure parody or parody default, as you can see, the bins of garbage turn into a cage with fillies and colts in it. And if I switch to polite default or pure polite, then it switches back to a bin sorted by color of garbage. Now let me show you how this works. If I set it to parody default, then in gameplay these graphics will display as fillies and colts. But if I approach them, I've actually got a dummy NPC here that as soon as you get close triggers some dialogue. And let's see. Here's Pinkie Pie saying, "Ew, what's that smell? Sweet Apple Acres apple peels. I'd recognize them anywhere." You can recognize them even after they've rotted? Oh man, there was a slight glitch and you couldn't see Rainbow Dash's reaction. She says that Applejack just put her off of cider. What's this garbage doing in the Weather Factory? Remember how Sassaflash told us she had a recycling machine? I bet this trash is here to be recycled into rainbows. Or at least it was until the factory got attacked. Yeah, one of the things that I want to add on to this is some lore where a Pegasus pony with a machine crawls her way to Twilight's castle during an absolutely torrential and unscheduled downpour, explains to Twilight that the Weather Factory has been attacked, and the machine that this Pegasus pony has, the Pegasus pony is Sassaflash. She's a background pony, but anyways, Sassaflash tells Twilight that the machine is designed to crush garbage and recycle garbage into rainbows. And that allows me to say that something a bit more family-friendly is being destroyed to make rainbows than failed fillies and colts. But I stick to the Rainbow Factory-esque canon for the parody mode for the most part. Let's see. But if I press space, as you can see, this boundary around the text area has turned red. That's a signal that we're in parody mode. And as you can see, these bins of garbage have turned back into fillies and colts. When you've got polite default, then until and unless it's showing some parody dialogue, it by default shows non-parody images. As soon as parody dialogue happens, then it switches the images back to the parody images. Parody default is the opposite of that. And Parody default is the opposite. It would show images of these fillies in these cages until and unless non-parody dialogue happens. And it's just clicked in my skull that some dialogue is non-parody for the simple reason that there is no parody dialogue attached to it. Yeah, I certainly hope that this is something like witty. To be honest, I added that dialogue to this with the idea in mind that could be expanded upon later. This is kind of a proof of concept. In some ways, Weather Factory Meltdown itself is just a proof of concept, but at the same time, it's something that I would like to expand into something that Hasbro might even approve of. The polite mode is essentially the sort of plot that Hasbro could approve of. The parody mode is something that essentially keeps me legal. Anyways, I should probably show you how to create a parody mode. Or rather, how I did. Let's see. I'll just fire up the boiler room here. Go to enemies, NPCs, and bosses, that layer. And Altostratus is the little Pegasus, the first NPC that you meet who needs some rain gear. And in each one of her 3 behaviors where she actually has rain gear, she's basically got some dialogue here, a little dialogue tree that basically just demonstrated how that works. And let me show you what the dialogue is here. There's generally a little flashing here when you preview the dialogue. I haven't bothered to fix that because it just doesn't make much difference. Let's see. And Altostratus is an original character, almost the only one. I had Tularula as a character at one point, but now that they've brought Tularula from G3 into G4 as a filly, I decided to replace Tularula with White Lightning, who is another background character. So basically that's the preview dialogue. It's entirely polite, but if you right-click on one of these listed dialogue chains and click Open Parody Version, then the background turns purple instead of yellow, and it shows a completely different dialogue here, completely different dialogue text field. As you can see, there's no commands. The idea is that first the game will go through all of this non-parody dialogue, then after it's done through the non-parody dialogue, it will jump to the parody dialogue, go through all of that, and when the parody dialogue is done, it will then do whatever commands you have here, if you've got any. Now, I'm actually going to have to reach the boiler room in order to demonstrate this. The way pure parody and pure polite differ from parody default and polite default is with pure parody, then if there's a parody version of any dialogue, then the game is just going to skip to that parody dialogue. In retrospect, it is possible to have dialogues that don't have a parody version of them, and what I'm a little bit worried about now, and it's something that I'm going to need to test, is what happens when there isn't a parody version of something and you've got it in pure parody mode, and there's something nearby, like a widget or something like that, that has parody images attached to it. Should it show the non-parody images while the non-parody dialogue is going? I don't think it should. I think it should just show the parody images, but I'll just have to double check to see whether that's the case. I won't release it until I've looked into that. Anyways, by the same token, if you're in pure polite mode, then it will skip the parody dialogue altogether. If you're in pure parody mode, skip straight to the parody dialogue. If you're in pure polite mode, it utterly skips the polite dialogue. What is going on here? Okay, nothing. It's fine. There's Dashy. There's Alto Stratus. Let's just go with pure polite so that I can show you what I mean. Let's see. We're investigating gem golems, trying to get to the emergency shutdown on the top floor. What can you tell us? Late last night, they attacked any pony they could see, tried to board up the doors. Some of them chased me to the boiler room, hiding by the furnaces to keep warm. This is the only safe place for you. Wish there was more we could do. Go, princess. Stop the factory. Go to the shutdown. There's stairs ahead. Not many stairs are open. Stay here until the rain stops. Once it does, we've got a hot air balloon outside the main entrance. We'll take you down to Ponyville to get medical attention. As you can see, there was no parody dialogue there. But if I go to pure parody, I mean, you can go through the dialogue choices just fine, but if you click on what happened in the factory, it says, back there you didn't see no fillies or colts. Yes, we did. Pinky. What? That just means it was take your foal to work and stick them in a cage day. That was my favorite day when I was a filly. This conversation is over. So with that one, it just switches straight to the parody dialogue. If there happens not to be any parody dialogue, it doesn't do any of that. Anyways, if you have either parody default or polite default, then first it goes through the non-parody dialogue and then it goes to the parody dialogue. Anyways, before I stop this video, I should probably explain how parody images work. Let's see, what's a good room to show you for how parody images work? Well, why don't we try... Oh, I know, the color grinding room. Let's see. Here's a good one. This is a background widget that has a parody version and a polite version. So I've selected this one, garbage being processed, beware of awful smells. The idea is that this room, if you're in polite mode, then basically this is grinding up trash to be recycled in these grinders. If you're in parody mode, it's grinding up fillies and colts. Anyways, if I edit this, garbage being processed, beware of awful smells. This is the non-parody version of it. If you notice real close here, there's a little asterisk after the .gif. That asterisk is intended to say this is a frame that has a parody version of it. You right-click on an individual frame and you have the ability to switch on parody mode. This turns into... Oh, that's bizarre. Okay, show non-parody, show parody image. Oh, I get it. This is basically just clear because when we're not in parody mode, it shows whatever is in the background behind it. So let me just clear this off. If I shut off this eye that shows the items, widgets, and door layer, then you get to see what was behind that widget. And what's behind that widget is a sign saying this will teach you to ignore warnings. And the same thing is happening over here. Any tourists who have seen this room have seen too much. Toss them in. But over top of that, I created a widget that says caution color grinders. Basically, those widgets become completely transparent as soon as you're in parody mode, and everything that's on the background Yeah, everything that's on the background becomes visible. Like if I open up the background here, then you can see that this is part of the foreground of the level. And let's see, what can have parody images? Let's see. Widgets can have them, smart widgets can have them, including smart widgets that are on multi-layered backgrounds. Conveyors can have them, custom NPCs can have them, speaker NPCs can have them. Let's see, is there anything else that can have them? Widgets, smart widgets, oh yes. Playable characters can also have parody images for them. So unless you're specifically doing this for a fan game and you really want to cover your own ass with making sure that your game is a parody so that it's technically legal, this feature probably isn't going to be very useful to you. I'm hoping that other bronies start to use this game engine for their own fan games, but if that happens, then they'll have this option. One last thing, if you go into the options menu, you'll notice that developer commentary is enabled here. If developer commentary is locked, then pure polite and pure parody mode will also be locked. I'm not sure whether I'm going to keep that indefinitely, but that's how I've got it at the moment. That's basically it.